another factor here that does not come up. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I'd like to know how our neighbors to the east, where we have several 100,000 people with a real hard border, the Mississippi River, obviously, how that factors in. That's, you know, we can't even name a bridge in agreement with Illinois. There's several 100,000 people there. Many of them come across those bridges every day to add to our economy and pay taxes. What are your thoughts on that?
I've seen bi-states where you might as well be on separate parts of the country, and then bi-states, as you know, where there's cooperation. That you don't have to just talk to people in your own state. Anybody in your regional economy is worth the conversation with. And so again, Camden, New Jersey, is to Philadelphia. Let's say East St. Louis is across the river to St. Louis. And sometimes a distressed population that's in another state creates an additional compounding difficulty, because they end up being the responsibility of another state like Illinois. So what it is that if there's a region that underperforms and it requires subsidy in the form of state transfer, federal transfer, that region ends up becoming more the sort of recipient or ward of that interest than it does a genuine partner. Whereas Johnson County, Kansas, for example, is the most affluent part of Kansas City metropolitan area, and is sort of engine actually of that region in a way. And I know it's down to individual street by street problems between Kansas and Missouri in that, but they have a more, they're deeper in the Kansas City structure than your case, because what you have in this case is there is a distressed urban core in St. Louis, there's a distressed urban core across the river, then west of St. Louis is a relatively affluent and high performing, even western parts of St. Louis are relatively affluent and high performing, and it doesn't jump over the river for that reason. So it's been a challenge, but I say this, the distress that carries over across the river creates a core of underperformance for the region as a whole. That reduces its market profile, that reduces its economic competitiveness. And so the stakes are this: no matter what part of your region is participating, no matter what its status, if it is not part of the conversation, you have lost some part of state government in the other side of the river. If there's commit stake and make on behalf of people who are in your region, you've lost all kinds of capacity. I'll give you just one example. Is last week I was in Washington, D.C. There is a road proposed between Phoenix and Las Vegas. There's no interstate between Phoenix and Las Vegas, the two largest cities in the U.S. and interstate. The delegation from Arizona and the delegation from Nevada and the local chambers of commerce all along the path were there together. So I'm in Clark County, Nevada. Across the Colorado River from us is Mojave County, Arizona. It turns out it's now in our combined statistical area. And the two co-chairs are the person representing Mojave County and the person representing the parts of Clark County that connect to this freeway. We would never have done this without that ask, without that cooperation on the other side. It may even be that our state pays for part of the road to put skin in the game, because most of the road to Phoenix has to be built within Arizona. We've done it with California. We've helped build I-15 to Las Vegas. If you have that clear an identity, that clear a stake, and that if you don't come to Washington, which is broke and uninterested in your local problems, or come to the two state governments, in this case, our DOT and their DOT are doing a joint project, and will locate local and state resources to this. If you don't do this, it just won't get done. And so what it is whatever competitive disadvantage that representative will endure, whatever advantage somebody else can accumulate in another region, they'll pick up as an asset. They're getting stuff done in some of these other places. Denver didn't get together for a tea party. Denver got together because they had to redo the whole airport. Denver got together because they had to build a beltway. Denver got together to restore the downtown of Denver, because they knew it was a common asset. They got together to do light rail in Denver and so on. And the same is true here. the people in Mojave seem nice enough, but the reality is, the reason we're talking to them is that within our region, we're gonna end up building the damn interchange at Kingman on I-40. I bet you that. You know, it's one of these things where the reason is it's actually within our region and it's our road. We're gonna have to actually tell our state legislature that we have enough cooperation with this other place, that we're gonna actually have to partner on what looked to have been originally a state responsibility, a federal responsibility. If you don't do this as a region now, you're dead in the water. Because nobody in Washington cares a lick. Washington is dysfunctional. Don't count on it getting functional in a hurry. And its share of resources that are going non-defense spending, non-elderly entitlement is shrinking. It's got nothing. It can't even give you a light rail system at this point. They took that punch bowl away, you know, a few years ago. So all of this is happening, and that the only path is that metros cooperate and agree upon what are the assets they need in common to go after, and what is the path to those assets. And you're not talking, you can't get it.
What is, you know, St. Louis well, I do very well. What's your feeling about how we communicate in this region?
It's not Detroit, but it's not Denver, and it's not Pittsburgh, and it could stand improvement. And you need that improvement as the basis for either any formal confirmation through consolidation, or through any any advancement as far as identifying common assets. There is a nice leadership discussion that I think is productive in this region. I think that's positive. But you can't just say, from the perspective of, let's say, the leading firms in a region who have a very high stake in that region, who have a high stake in its quality of life and education, economic performance, they can do their part and they can lead. They need partners in the community and they need partners in government. And the region has so much fragmentation and so much local identity that it's been hard to translate some of the civic-mindedness of the leading firms into local action. Now again, I've seen it where there are big firms and they provide a lot of of the sort of investment as public-private partnerships emerge for these big regional pushes, but without a friendly government context, it's difficult to translate that, because what this requires is that there's so little resource for so many demands that unless you combine assets, it's difficult to get anything done. And the failure here has been a habit, and the habit is the habit of locality, and I see it in New Jersey. It's not on any one person's back. It's that if this is the cultural habit or the social habit of the region, if you will, or sort of the governance structure of the region, then electeds, until told otherwise, are actually supposed to be stewards of the local interest. So unless there is a context by which you can partner, a local mayor is wise to sort of hunker down and say, this is my turf. The legislature can say what it wants, but from where I sit at my desk, you guys can make whatever rules you want, and you can go sit in the legislature and have whatever fun you're going to have. And the bottom line is, I'm stuck with this much budget and this much demand, and if you start taking any of this out of the pot, then none of my numbers work. So I'm going to be necessarily, nothing personal, kind of insistent that you leave me alone, unless you tell me the path out of it, that the governance structure emerges where I trust the collective interests of the region, that the sort of gathered interests of the region sufficiently to where, yeah, I'll bite. And it's a dance. In Denver, there were renegade mayors on that Metro Council, and they would show up and they'd say, too bad, I'm going after X company. And then the mayor would leave office, and another mayor would come in and they'd say, the last person was a little, can we bridge build back? I get it now, I get it. Our planning department realizes stuff's spilling into the city, and we don't seem to be talking to these relevant neighbors, can I get back in? And it's always welcome. You say, no matter,